Hello everybody, not all sliders are created equal. Hello everybody, and today we are going to talk sliders. So I'm going to be talking you through different types of sliders and how different they are. So hopefully by the end of the video, you'll be able to gain some insight on sliders in general, particularly for those of you who have plans to purchase a slider. So hopefully this video will be helpful in helping you choose a slider. Now in front of me, I have three different sliders. This is some $40 Chinese slider. This is the Casa Pocket Dolly version 2, and this is the Camera SD1 slider dolly. When it comes to sliders, there's two types of them. There's friction sliders and then there's bearing sliders. Now, if I were to be very direct with it, friction sliders are shit. So before I convince you not to buy friction sliders, let me demonstrate. This one here is a friction slider. The other two of these are bearing sliders. Now, the way friction sliders work is there is a cart that glides along a linear guide rail. So it's literally just a chunk of metal with two holes cut out on it that glide on a rail. They often have plastic bushings that sit between the cart and the rail to reduce friction when sliding, so it's not metal and metal. But then again, it's called a friction slider, so you can probably expect plenty of it. So when you just push the cart along like this, pretty much the same way you would to a demo unit at, say, a showroom, it feels acceptably smooth. But when you actually mount a fluid head and a camera on it, you're adding a lot of weight to the setup. Therefore, you're increasing the friction, and then it's nowhere near as smooth. So now I have a camera and a fluid head set up on the slider, and if I try to push it, instantly I can feel that it takes a lot more force to get it going, and it is actually quite choppy. That is due to the increase in friction caused by the weight of the setup. And one thing about friction sliders, I'm going to hold down the rail so you can see, is that there is a lot of wobble on the cart. That's due to the amount of free play between the cart and the rail. They tend to have a lot of free play. That's what's causing this annoying wobble, which can be very bad if you're trying to pull off a smooth slide. And I'm going to hold the rail down just to show you how annoying the wobble can be. This is entirely the wobble from just the cart itself. I'm holding down the rail. And the biggest drawback on friction sliders would be its inconsistency. It's so unpredictable because the amount of friction across the length of the slider is actually inconsistent. So that makes it very hard to control your movements. It's very hard to maintain a stable velocity as you're pulling off a shot, which is very crucial if you want a smooth shot. So now I'm actually going to shoot some sample footage using the friction slider here. I have my camera right here and it's recording, and I'm going to try to use a light touch to push it down the length of the slider, but I really have to apply quite a lot of force to it because there's so much friction going on, and it is really hard to maintain a consistent push down the length of the slider. I can constantly feel it fighting back. It's really hard to control. Now, I'm not saying it's completely impossible to get a usable smooth shot out of a friction slider. It's definitely possible. It's just a lot harder compared to using a bearing slider, and it takes a lot less effort to achieve the same results using a bearing slider. And you can see all that friction just holding the camera in place if I give it a sharp push. Now, there's probably better quality friction sliders out there on the market compared to the one that I have. They probably have lesser wobble and maybe smoother moves. However, if you're considering it as a long-term investment, friction sliders can't give you anywhere near the amount of reliability you can get with bearing sliders. Now, bearing sliders are just like friction sliders. They have a rail, they have a cart, however, they have bearings, they have wheels. So let's have a look at this one here. This is the Camera SD1 slider dolly, and I'm just gonna give it a light push, and you can see how smooth it is. The difference is like pushing a box on the floor compared to pushing it with a trolley. So because it has bearings, friction is no longer an issue. Even with heavy rigs, you have a very high degree of control over the movement. So here on the SD1, you can see that there are 4 plastic bearings that allow the cart to glide along the rail very smoothly. So compared to friction sliders, the biggest difference you'll notice is the amount of force you need to apply to get it going and the amount of control you have, particularly when it comes to slow and small movements. Let's move this over to the slider dolly so I can demonstrate. So here, as you can see, with just a very light touch, it glides along like butter. It's incredibly smooth compared to the friction slider. It feels effortless. There's simply no going back to friction sliders after you've used a bearing slider. So now let's take some footage using the Camera SD1 slider dolly. Camera's rolling, and I'm just gonna give it a very light push. And just look at how effortless that is. It feels so smooth and so light. It feels like air. It's like it's gliding on air. And it's effortless. Compared to the friction slider just now, this is a whole new world. With the friction slider, you really had to shove the cart to get it moving. This one, you just give it a soft push and you can see how it just glides along the slider. If I give it a sharp push, it glides till the very end. Really nice stuff. Now this one here is the Casa Pocket Dolly version 2. It's the most expensive slider out of these three, and it's a bearing slider as well. However, if I flip it over, you can see that it has metal bearings instead of plastic bearings, and it has a drive system and a crank handle over here, which means if I turn this crank handle, it will move the cart. And the crank handle is made out of metal as well, so it has quite a bit of weight to it, and because it's connected to the cart through the drive system, it adds inertia to the cart. So when you push the cart, it has a dampening effect on it. For sliders that have a drive system, they're often compatible with motorized motion control systems that are often developed by the same brand as the slider. They usually come as add-ons there and they are very expensive, but that just means that you have the option of using your slider with a motion control system to allow you to get incredibly consistent moves every single time, or to repeat a complex move, and you can also use it to create some stunning time lapses. So let's check out what the footage on the Casa looks like. So I'm just gonna give it a very light push. It definitely requires a heavier push compared to the camera SD1 slider dolly earlier on, but it does have a bit more of a momentum to it. It feels easier to control. The SD1 feels very light, but for this one, if you need to carry out a very slow and precise move, it's gonna give you a higher degree of control, and it's definitely a joy to push. And with a sharp push, it does glide quite a bit. So these are the basic things that you should know about when it comes to sliders. There's friction sliders, bearing sliders, and sliders with a drive system. Of course, technology is always advancing and there's always new systems coming out when it comes to sliders, but these are the basic lowdowns. So that's pretty much it for today, everybody. If you have any questions, any comments, just leave them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe for more videos, and I will see you in the next video.